Cool. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. That was a software problem. Sorry, gents. Thank you guys so much for your patience. Marius, don't worry, I was listening. All right, so let's just start from there again. I think I think it's important that we understand how this works because again, the worry is like people. I think like for me, is like okay, well the ANC can kind of do whatever they want, but like you said, it's good to get ahead of it. Let's jump over to DRSA and do you guys have a way of Afriform and DRSA? Have you guys preempted this as well? Is there any plans to kind of prevent this? Have you already started? What's the deal? Rob, you can go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I think, look, the president has already announced that they are going to be moving regulations underneath the Health Act. But in order to do that, it will require quite a few legislative amendments, which is great because a legislative amendment will have to go out for public comment. Regulations don't normally have to be put up for public comment, but I think in this case they would put them out even if it's for a couple of days or a week or so. It'll be unwise if they didn't. And during that time, we have an opportunity to present to Parliament and present to the various committees and to individuals and convince them of the dangers of this. We know they're following international trends. Most regulations around the world are housed under the Health Act, and uh, we'll just have to follow trends there as well and keep a strong eye on it. But I think they'll try and move quite a few of the regulations, especially when it comes to vaccines and mandates surrounding vaccines and the COVID passport and so on. That will definitely be housed under that act. However, President Ramaphosa has already mentioned something around establishing a mandate was a task team to discuss the possibility of mandatory vaccinations, and that's gone really quiet, or we haven't heard anything else around that. But the fact that he's actually established that task team means that there will have to be some sort of legislation that or amendment bill or something around that to actually create that proper initiative and make it legal. And that's again where I know us as DRSA will push that into the public and create a huge fuss and hopefully create thousands and thousands of submissions
Mm.
to government.
Awesome. Ernst, do you have anything to add to that?
Mm. Now, I'd just like to add some good news, seeing as there are a lot of things getting people down, some defeats and some setbacks. There was a big victory that happened just yesterday on the 21st of February, and that is that the state abandoned its plans for forced COVID-19 treatment quarantine camps after pressure by AfriForum. So, just to give you a little bit of context there for people that didn't see the news story break. The state has abandoned its plans to force people who test positive for COVID-19 to isolate in state facilities after sustained pressure by AfriForum. The regulations also indicated that people who test positive for COVID-19 should receive mandatory medical treatment. No indication was given as to what type of medical treatment was being referred to. That's why when Rob talked about mandatory stuff, I thought about this. That lack of transparency there. But luckily, we were able to put a stop to these quarantine camps as well through sustained pressure. And I mean that's what Rob and Marius have been talking about as well as the balance of forces. That's how the ANC does politics. They look at the balance of forces. Are the forces currently in our favor? Is the balance a bit off? If the balance is a bit off, they wait. When the balance is right, or when the forces seem to be in their direction, they go for it. And I mean, the only way you can offset the balance of forces is through resistance. Through, for example, the efforts of DRSA, the IRR, AfriForum Solidarity, and many other organizations in civil society taking on these regulations. Sometimes they do not produce outright court victories or decisive victories, But in the long run, the resistance itself offsets the balance of forces, and that is what really brings the results. Is when you can get the ANC to realize that they are going to meet resistance. They just can't float and coast along into their draconian utopia.
Yes, and thank you to Afriform for that lovely good news. I did see it, and I will leave a link to that article or that press release later on. For those of you that are tuning in again, thank you so much for tuning in and jumping on. Sorry about the mix-up earlier. I don't know what happened. Maybe there's an update I can. There's obviously the program is being a bit buggy. It's not normally like this. But thank you to my guest as well for being patient. Okay, so I think we have to strap ourselves in for a fight. I think we can all agree that there probably is going to be a fight, especially if they want these health regulations to continue. I mean, Marius, what do you think they'll try and push through? Do you think it's going to be like the mask and the social distancing and all that stuff? Do you think that's what they meant by some of the regulations might be in the Health Act?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I don't want to read anybody's minds, but I'm really surprised if something around mandatory vaccinations. But I have to say, if you look around the world, I mean, in the UK, Boris Johnson just said basically all restrictions in England are going away from Thursday. People won't have to isolate. And I think in the UK, I'm open to correction, but I don't think they've had mask mandates for a couple of months now. It's up to you if you want to wear a mask. As far as I know, they're going to recommend that private businesses can still ask people for their NHS pass, which is proof that you've been vaccinated, but they're going to recommend that private businesses stop doing that actually from the 1st of April, I believe. So I think things are kind of changing around the world. We've also seen lots of resistance in other places to, the kind of these draconian health laws and so on. I mean, we all know what's happening in Canada at the moment, and I think we've seen in certain places in the US, lots of Western Europe. There's also been pushback against it, and as I said, we've seen what's happened in the UK now. Even though the rules in Scotland are a bit different, but England is dropping, as I say, basically all COVID rules. So I think we might, this might also get pushed back against. And we've seen, as I say, that the government and the ANC, when they do see there's public resistance to a thing, as Aaron said, they push back and they'll leave it. I think a very good example was the curfew. We had curfew until about the 30th of December this year. And then on the 29th or 30th or whenever it was, they came out and said, cool, no, there's no more curfew. And I think because the government knew that basically everybody who wanted to go jolling on the 31st was going to go jolling. Nobody was going to stay at home and make sure they're going to be home at midnight. Unlike the previous year, at the end of 2020, where I think a lot of people were happy to follow the rules. Maybe not happy, but they understood, okay, cool, there's a curfew. Let's follow the rules. If we want to go have a party, let's go to somebody's house. We're not out, what have you. And I think the government knew people have had it up to, there's lockdown fatigue. And I mean, we can see from the numbers at the end of December, there wasn't really a wave in South Africa. And as far as I know from what I've read, I think even the government itself has said South Africans have about 80% of South Africans are immune to COVID now, whether from the being vaccinated or from previous infections or whatever the case is. So yeah, I think there's quite a good chance that there actually won't be anything put under the new Health Act, under Health Act, but it's something we definitely got to watch. And I think as it stands now, there's probably a good chance that none of these regulations will be made permanent, but the people need to push back against it, and people need to support the allies. And because if that doesn't happen, then it could be possible that things like masks and being forced to quarantine against your will, or mandatory vaccines do become actual law in South Africa in the long run.
Yeah, well, look, it's no doubt that each one of your organizations do make a difference. I wanted to have someone from Sakhalika as well on here, but unfortunately couldn't make it happen because they've also been fighting against the state disaster and have done they recently got some good news as well. So, but either way, my point is all these organizations that are fighting for us, I think is where it's at, because you guys fight on the legal front, and even though it takes a long time, it's still, I think, what really works. And then added to that public pressure with protests and other things happening. Speaking of which, I worry that if there is mandatory vaccines, Rob, I'd like to get your opinion on this. That we could see more outcry. We could see something like we saw in July again, and do you think the ANC realizes this and they're scared of it, or do you think they might actually favor it?
It's a difficult question to answer because there's so many different factors at play here, and one of those really important factors is the establishment of the vaccine manufacturing plant in South Africa. I think that's going to play a major role in whether the ANC decides to introduce mandatory vaccinations or not. There's considerable investment in that plant, and the idea is to push the vaccines from South Africa, from that manufacturing plant throughout Africa, through the African Union, of course, of which Cyril Ramaphosa is the chairperson of. So if you bring in all of those external factors, then in the back of my mind it says we are going to see some sort of mandatory vaccination or mandatory vaccinations in some sort of form because of the financial investment. However, we've seen unions stand up, we've seen taxi associations stand up and say there's no way you're going to introduce it. So from a political point of view, I think it would be a suicide move for the ANC to actually do that. By the time they get it right, we'll be approaching elections. So it will be really a political mistake if they do that. So I'm torn between will they do it or will they not? I think we just have to wait it out and see. But that doesn't mean we should stand back and expect them not to do it. I think we should always err on the side of caution and say, worst case scenario is they do introduce it. Let's put measures in place. Let's put precautions in place, and let's take the action now as a preventative measure in case it does happen.
Yeah, I think Ernst, I would like to get your opinion on that as well, because you guys obviously, you're an analyst yourself. You look at the landscape of South Africa, if I can put it that way. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I'd like to add to something that Marius said, and that is, if you look at the broader picture, this whole biocontrol state narrative is falling apart. All these countries, Norway, Austria, in England, all these European countries are abandoning their COVID policies. They're bringing them to an end. They're pretty much saying, well, pandemic's over. And they don't seem to be indicating that they are going to be going back to many of these policies. So I think if the ANC were to try now to reinstate many of these draconian measures, they would stick out like a sore thumb compared to other countries where things are calming down now, where governments are pulling back. I think the little bit of goodwill that many governments had has completely dried up. A good example would be in Canada. I don't think many of these draconian policies in Canada are going to last much longer with the type of resistance that you're seeing there now. But you can see how goodwill has been completely just depleted in a country like that. And then you have these countries condemning other countries for their authoritarian measures. And then you have people being trampled by police horses and people's bank accounts being frozen. It's horrific stuff. But that's what many of these Western countries have devolved into. That's what happens when you just start getting high on your own supply, and you start really just thinking, well, I'm in too deep now. It's almost like a sunken cost fallacy that many of these governments and politicians and leaders subscribe to, where the sunken cost fallacy basically states that you argue that I've sunk so much money into this business, I can't quit now. I can't close the business now. I've put so much money into it, and you just keep losing money. And that's what we're seeing with many of the COVIDians and people still still championing a lot of these absurd policies all across the world, is that firstly, on an individual level, they've built their personalities around supporting and defending and white knighting for these policies. So when those policies aren't there anymore, what are they going to do then with their time? They can't debate people online about that anymore. They're going to have to find something else. And then you see politicians and leaders and political figures that have bet their reputations on these policies. They've put all their chips on them. So these policies going away and a lot of them being exposed as useless is not going to be good for them. So they're going to hold on to them as long as they can. There's going to be, but I will predict one last thing, one final thought. I predict in a few years there's going to be a surge in people that are going to look back at these past 2 years and are going to say, I never supported that. I was always against it. I never supported X, Y, and Z. I saw right through it. And
You're
then
talking
people
about
are going to
Nicholas
bring up their
Bauer.
old tweets. People are going to bring up their old tweets, and then they're going to see, well, no, you were actually driving around looking for people outside their flats that you can report them to the authorities. But there's going to be a lot of that type of denialism very soon, of people pretending like they were always opposing these types of policies. That's definitely something I can see on the horizon.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And most of them will be journalists, I reckon.
Yeah, we've there always are. They'll act like oh no, I was part of the good fight this entire time, guys. But yeah, the internet is forever. All right, so I'm gonna shift the conversation a little bit, seeing as I got you guys here. I think where we all stand now is like we just got to see what the ANC does. You guys are ready. You guys are prepared. You know the possibilities, if I can say that, of where they can go. But as long, or at least until you see what the ANC does, you're just gonna lie a bit in wait and see what happens. Am I correct? It's pretty much everyone's, yeah. Look, and again, I want to say to everybody, like, please support these guys, and no, nobody on this panel has paid me to say this. Really,
I did buy Joe a drink once.
Yeah, once. Seriously, support these guys and continue to protest. Those of you that do protest, and because it's public pressure, and it's these guys, their organization pressure as well, that gets the government to go like, okay, maybe we should think about what we're doing here. And look, in my opinion, I think the ANC sees the writing on the wall. I think they're just going to pretty much milk South Africa for all that's left until 2024, because I think they know that they are pretty much out on their own in that case. The second thing I wanted to talk about actually is IRR. Started a campaign to against the race quotas. Marius, you'll need to give me the correct headline, but there will be a link in the description below if people want to go check it out. But can you tell us more about that, Marius?
Yeah, so it's basically that there's a new employment equity bill which will allow the Minister of Employment and Labour to set numerical targets for any national economic sector, as well as targets for different occupational levels, subsectors, or the regions with the sector. And this is to achieve equitable representation. So basically, in theory, what could happen is that the Minister of Labour could say, in the hospitality industry, we have to have at least 85% of everybody working in hospitality must be Black African, and 7% can be white, and 5% can be colored, and 2% can be Indian, or whatever the case is. But as we know, you can't, you can't have this kind of central control, and you can't go and tell people where what the racial makeup of their organization can be, and you definitely can't do it in a sector. Under apartheid, we obviously had Black people couldn't do certain jobs, skilled jobs, couldn't often were paid less than white people for doing the same job. But even under apartheid, never said that X amount of people in the sector have to be made up of a certain race or whatever the case might be. So it's completely ridiculous, and there's no real way of actually enforcing this, because there's no legal definition of what a Black person is in South Africa anymore, or what a white person is, or what a colored person is, or an Indian person. Because I'm an open correction on this, but under the Population Registration Act would have said the white person is this, blah blah blah, Black person is that. Now we don't have those those laws are off the statute books, thank God. But so in theory now, I could go and say that I'm a Black African. And nobody could actually say, no, you're not, because there's no legal definition of what a Black African is. So that is also part of the long-term strategy to, get. We need the government to say, okay, we are going to define what a Black African is or what a white person is, and these laws would then have to be brought back onto the statute books, which I think a lot of South Africans wouldn't be happy with that. We had these horrible laws where the government defined you on your race, and also to a large degree, I mean, obviously under apartheid, your life opportunities were restricted on what race you were. I mean, we don't have to rehash the history of apartheid South Africa and the time before apartheid South Africa, going back many years. But anyway, but it's not something that's one thing we would have thought that we would have moved past, that we are not going to have these racial categories and so on anymore. But if we have these kind of laws that the Minister of Labour wants to bring in, we're going to have to bring those, because how else do you define what race a person is without some sort of legal definition? So it's also, you're going to make this whole kind of thing collapse under its own contradictions, because I mean, if you can't say a certain sector has to have X amount of certain race if you don't even define what that race is. So it's the kind of circular logic. What is a Black African? Well, anybody who says they're a Black African. So does that mean the four of us sitting here can say that we're Black African if we just say that we are? But I mean, obviously anybody would say, well, no, obviously you guys aren't, and these are the reasons, but there's no legal definition to say what a Black African is or what a white person and colored person and so on is. So it's also a complete overreach by the government again, being wanting to tell entire sectors what the racial makeup of the company is going to be. And it's something we've got another campaign against that, and that's something we're going to be pushing back against quite firmly.
Fantastic. It's some scary stuff though. Like, just to be able, like, I don't understand that. Like, that's, oh well, there has to be certain amounts here and certain amount there in your business, to make it all equal. But a lot of the times, it's what's that thing again, Rob? Perhaps you can help me out here. That's saying equality of outcomes or something. That communist saying, I always forget it. But anyway, doesn't matter. I think, ladies and sorry.
Well, just one thing with this. This also leads to some unintended consequences. So I don't remember the exact details, but there was an Indian lady who'd applied to be promoted within the South African Police Service, and because Indians only make up 1% of the Indian in the SAPS, they can only, so for the position she wanted to be appointed to, less than, using the formula that they had, less than one Indian person could be appointed to this position or this level in the whole of the SAPS. So obviously they said, well, sorry lady, you qualified, but you can't be, because there's too few Indians, so you don't make up the the proportion.
You're too Indian, you need to be diluted.
Exactly. And we've also seen with I think it was I'm not sure, it was one of the legal councils where they voted. Then also they have these ridiculous race quotas where say they got 10 people on a legal board, say of the northern provinces, or the legal council of Gauteng, let's say, for argument's sake, because I can't remember the details now. Say 4 people had to be Black males, 3 had to be Black females, 2 had to be white males, and 1 had to be a colored female, whatever the case is. So, but people actually go vote for this, and afterwards they work out who fits the quotas. And actually, it came that there were more Black females who'd actually been voted in, who'd made the people had voted for them on their merits and wanted them to represent them on this legal council. But because of the silly quotas, they actually had to say, well, there's too many Black females who have got you on their own merits. We actually have to, we actually need to bring in a white male now to make up for it. So it just these kind of things will happen. We'll probably get, there'll be some hospitality company somewhere who employs, all their staff will be 100% Black women, and they'll come. Well, if they don't want to get a fine, they're gonna have to employ. They're gonna have to fire some of the Black women, and they're gonna have to employ some white males, or whatever the case is. So, and that's always the kind of thing that happens with these ridiculous race laws.
Jeez. But this is it. This is the quote I was thinking about. You can have equality of opportunity, but not equality of outcome. And that's kind of like where my mind goes when I hear stuff like this. It's unsettling. And is this a campaign that you guys have just started?
Yeah, well, it's something that we've been opposed to things like racial classification since, the Institute of Race Relations started in 1929. We've been opposed to race classification and people being treated differently on the basis of their race. I mean, the IRR is older than apartheid South Africa. As I say, I mean, we turn it's our centenary in 7 years' time.
Yeah.
So it's something we've been pushing back against for years. It's something we've been opposed to. We've come up with different proposals to help people who've been disadvantaged, through the history of this country. But it shouldn't simply be based on your race. We've come up with something called empowerment for the economically disadvantaged, where we'd look at people based on their circumstances, incomes, and so on. And if you look at that, where you help people on, how poor they are, if what kind of place they live in, the vast majority of people who will be assisted will still be Black South Africans. This isn't some kind of insidious way where white people will, be helped from being, get restitution or whatever the case is. And at the same time, there are white South Africans in this country who do live in poverty, and they shouldn't be excluded from assistance. Obviously, the numbers are far lower than Black South Africans and colored South Africans, but these people shouldn't be excluded simply on the basis of their race. So that is one of our, and that's a policy we've been pushing for many years as well. So it's called economic empowerment for the disadvantaged. So that's something people can also look at and support if they like. But this is just another part of what's basically been a long-running campaign. And we could even say it's a campaign we've been, running since the issue started in 1929. Because as I say, we've always been opposed to the race classification of South Africans and opposed to people being treated differently on the basis of their race.
Yeah. Now, well, I think everybody with a rational mind can agree with you on that. I just wanted to also mention that once again that I have just put the links on this stream, so anybody who wants to check out the links, go to everybody's Twitter, go to the websites, all that stuff. You just have to refresh the stream and you will see all the links in the description. So please, guys, support these guys as much as you can. Check out their websites, check out their Twitter handles, and follow them. Give them a follow. I mean, all these gentlemen are active on Twitter and have some pretty awesome tweets from time to time. So it's well worth Rob shaking his head. Oh man, you you're being humble now. All right, so seeing as we Marius just spoke about what IRR is doing now, this new campaign, sort of new campaign, but you know what I mean. Rob and Ernst, we'll start with Rob. Anything DRSA new that you guys, what new campaigns do you guys have coming up? And tell us about it.
Yeah, I think the major one we've got is obviously the challenge against the state of disaster. We've got a few other campaigns in response to legislation and amendments that government has just put out, and then we are teaming up with Sarkolika, oddly enough, on challenging some of the BEE regulations that Marius has actually mentioned as well. Sarkolika just actually had a victory in the Concord, where I think it was 4 versus 3 or 5 versus 4 judges. It's 5 versus 4, isn't it? 5 versus 4 judges that actually said that certain BE regulations in regards to tenders which are inappropriate and should be withdrawn. So I think that's a major step towards the IRR's campaign, their long-lasting campaign. And it's hopefully a step in the right direction for the country as a whole. The only way we can get out of this economic disaster is by putting aside all these BE regulations. It's absolutely ridiculous that they kill the economy, they make it difficult to do business, and it's kind of lowering the standards all across the board there. To go back to your quote there, it's definitely affecting equality of outcome, which should never be the case. It should be equality of opportunity. But exactly that. I think that'll be an interesting case there. There might be quite a few going on there in collaboration with Sarkolika and other organizations as well. AfriForum on the state of disaster challenge there. And as you know, there's always legislative amendments that come out on a weekly basis in the Government Gazette. So we keep on top of those as well and let the public have their say.
Fantastic. That sounds great. Ernst, AfriForum, man, you guys, okay, firstly, you guys just came out of a heavy trial. I know you did an analysis on your channel, so I'm not expecting you to do it here. But what is next? What big thing is AfriForum fighting next?
Well, let me see. I'm going to have to decide maybe on 5 out of 20 irons that we have in the fire. Firstly, maybe if people are curious about the hate speech case against Julius Malema, I did a full analysis on that on my channel. You can go check it out after this. I think one of our recent campaigns that we started is fighting for language rights in schools, where the government now wants to force schools all across the country that the government can choose what language is used in classrooms and what language of instruction is used there. But we're fighting for specifically Afrikaans schools to remain Afrikaans if that is what they want to do, if that is what the majority of their students speak. Then we have our 2 Julius Malema EFF court cases, the one where we take him and the EFF on for kill the Boer or kiss the Boer, kill the farmer. That hate speech case not concluded, but we concluded the cross-examination and presentation of all the evidence the past 2 weeks. And we are now we're waiting now for closing arguments and a verdict. We will keep people up to date when that happens. Joe, it's been one of the busiest weeks of my life, and it's only Tuesday.
Yeah, no, I've had weeks like that, man. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And then, of course, we'll just continue also opposing horrible legislation like national health insurance, expropriation without compensation, and of course, fixing more thousands of potholes every month.
Awesome. There is something I would like to pose to you, gentlemen, seeing as we touched on the EFF and AfriForum case. It's interesting to me, and I've been saying this a lot because it's just so alarming to me. I cannot believe the deafening silence from opposition parties and mainstream media, and the mainstream media or corporate media that does speak about the trial somehow tries to paint AfriForum and EFF as both the bad guys. Somehow they try and do that. So I thought, seeing as we're all here, perhaps Rob and Marius, you guys would like to comment on your thoughts about this. Marius, you can have the floor first.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a point been made many times by other people that Julius Malema is, to a degree, a creation of the media in South Africa. When he first, came to prominence, he hasn't. The things Julius Malema says, he hasn't changed. He's actually been quite consistent with some things. His support for Zuma is a bit different. His views on foreigners has changed a bit, but on some things he's been always quite consistent. His views on minorities, whether that's white people or Indian people, his views on the media in general, he's always been quite consistent on that. You just have to think back to when the guy's name was Jonah Fisher, I think, when Julius Malema was still head of the ANC Youth League. And Jonah Fisher asked him a question that he didn't like, I think was about a mansion that Julius Malema just bought or was building in Sandton or something. And Julius Malema completely lost his temper and he insulted the guy, told him to leave, told him he was a small boy and he had to get out of there. And, but then we still had the media fawning over Julius Malema and acting as if he's not, a threat. And, I can tell you now, we saw how Julius Malema, he's always had things to say about white people and then moved on to Indian people. It'll get to a point where he's saying the same things about colored people. It'll come to a point where he's saying the same things about Zulus or, Tswanas or people who aren't Pedi or whatever, or, maybe Ngunis in general or something. I don't know. But yeah, I'll get to that point. He's a divisive person, and he uses this various kind of ideology just to push himself. As I say, he was always going on about, that Africa is actually one country and there shouldn't be borders. As soon as Action SA did pretty well in the municipal election, especially in Joburg, where Action SA got 16% of the vote and EFF actually went backwards. They lost 2 seats in the municipal council in Joburg. Same as in Tshwane, they actually went backwards in Tshwane. We saw that Julius Malema suddenly changed his, his tune, and he's saying, well, actually, we need to, maybe these people need to go back to where they come from. And he's also saying some very dangerous things just in terms of South Africans. We said Zulus, you would not go to a place in Polokwane and have a place where there are only Zulus working there. And he said vice versa in Durban. You wouldn't go to Durban and there'd be a business where there are only Pedis. So he's getting already quite, some dangerous tribalist and regionalist rhetoric. So it's all, none of what Julius Malema says surprises me. But I think people are starting to wake up. And as I say, the party did go backwards in some municipalities in 2020 last year compared to 2016. In some places they went back quite significantly, actually. In Polokwane, which is basically the EFF stronghold. I mean, Julius Malema is from there. In 2016, they got 30% of the vote in Polokwane. This election, November, they got 22% of the vote. And as I say, they went backwards in Joburg and Tshwane. And most of the country, they actually stayed still or went, just that small gains, only really in KwaZulu-Natal and, parts of the Eastern Cape and Northern Cape, they really see big gains. But in the rest of the country, they actually went backwards, or they, were jogging on the spot. So I think a lot of South Africans, I think a lot of people who do vote for Julius Malema actually vote for him just as a kind of a protest vote. They don't necessarily agree with everything he says. They don't want to vote for the ANC anymore, and they might have their issues with the DA or whatever other kinds of parties there are. So I don't think there are many people who vote for the EFF who are really behind their kind of hateful rhetoric and, really want some kind of Afro-socialist dictatorship in South Africa. So I think a lot of people are seeing through the EFF. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people seem to think that Julius Malema is going to be president of South Africa one day, including himself. But yeah, I don't think so. The only way you would get that is if he, returns to the ANC and, makes his way, becomes deputy president in an ANC EFF coalition or something. But if he remains in the EFF, we'll never see Julius Malema president in this country.
Yeah, that was a very funny moment in the trial. Rob, your opinion on mainstream media and how they've been just talking about this trial?
No, geez. Yeah, it has been quite fascinating, but not unexpected. I don't think at all. As Marius definitely pointed out there, that Julius Malema is definitely the media darling, always has been, and he was definitely created by the media. So it stands to reason that he will be as controversial as possible to grab the media's attention in everything that he does. But I have to commend Advocate Mark Oppenheimer's ability there. It was fascinating the way he just kept feeding Malema rope, because he knew that Malema, everything that he does is to attract media attention. So I think the way, and it worked well. It really worked really well. The way he just kept giving him enough rope so that he would actually hang himself and expose who he really was, and expose the media at the same time, which is exactly what happened. I think I only saw one alternative news network or some other media channel. Is that yours? Not yours, is it? But it was some media channel had one article about Afriforum, which was praising Afriforum in one way, but not one media outlet actually said anything about his quote there, where he refused to pledge to not kill white people, call for the killing or slaughter of white people. To me, that should have been headline news. In fact, that should have been global news. That's astounding. The leader of the third largest political party in South Africa making a statement like that and refusing to take a pledge, even though he changed his tune mid-sentence. It was quite bizarre. So I think the media have got some answering to do. They really do. Where's the honest and non-biased reporting? It clearly does not exist. And if anything that this trial has exposed is that media bias, and I think that's the greatest win out of this whole trial. Even if I actually don't care at this stage what the outcome is, what the judgment is against Malema, but I think everyone has woken up to the fact that the media created him, the media support him, and the media will never say anything bad against him. They will always attack Afriforum for who knows what reason, but that's just the game that they play. But yeah, I think that's the media need to be held to account. Yeah, they really do.
And Ernst, I left you last for a reason, because you're the representative of Afriforum. You've been every day at this trial, and Deborah even here saying Daily Maverick came out in criticism of both Malema and Afriforum. I mean, I cannot imagine what it's like for someone who was in the trial, for someone who's part of this organization. And, Malema says all these horrible things that should alarm everyone, and yet somehow, Afriforum is still the bad people. I mean, come on.
No.
What's your thoughts here?
No, absolutely. I mean, I was there. I looked Malema in the eye. I was there also when we exited the court building and the EFF supporters chanted at us in our faces, kill the boer, kill the farmer. And then you hear Julius say these absolutely heinous, vile, deplorable things. And then the next day you read in the paper, oh, yeah, the organization you working for AfriForum means you're exactly the same as this monster. I mean, it's bizarre, but it's as Rob said, it's not unexpected. I think our standards are have dropped very low when it comes to this type of analysis. I mean, if you can't see honestly, like genuinely can't see the difference between AfriForum and the EFF, and you think these two are two sides of the same coin, you are either ignorant or being malicious. And I think at this point, there's not a lot of room left for the ignorance excuse. This is now going into maliciousness territory. I don't think these people writing these columns, these comment class people, really believe that AfriForum and the EFF are the same thing. That's just the narrative that they've latched onto. That's the narrative that makes them feel nice and fuzzy inside when they say it. But now put yourself in my shoes as someone that works for AfriForum, someone that was screamed at that by people, that a violent chant that would kill the boer, kill the farmer. It was brought up in this court case that farmer means whiteness. It means white people. And people are chanting in your face that they want to kill you and they want to see you killed. And then the media comes out and says, yeah, you guys are actually the same thing. You, the target, and the people chanting they want to kill you are the same thing. It's absolutely bizarre. But in the end, I think I tweeted this week that there's very few things that motivate you like injustice. There's very few things that put a fire in your chest like being confronted by genuine wickedness, and that's definitely what happened this past week. And I'm more motivated than ever. Like I said, I'm working like a demon when it comes to writing and organizing and designing campaigns and really doing my part in regards to exposing Julius Malema for exactly what he is. And I'm very proud to be doing it. And I'm also very glad to specifically channels like yours and other channels in the alternative media sphere for actually bringing the real angles and the real news and the real analysis when it comes to this story. You are not wasting your time with absolutely trivial stuff, as many of these journalists have made ascendant to their headlines of like Julius Malema said he's going to be president one day. I think you put like a clip on your channel and that's it. But they make that the story. They're like, Julius Malema said this thing. And it's reprehensible, and they should be ashamed of themselves that they think that's the real story, and that's the story that the world and the country needs to see. But if the civil rights organization AfriForum taking people like Julius Malema, that's been exposed for what he is, to court, it's made possible by our members. And if you're not a member yet, you can visit our website and click join and become a member. If you're in South Africa, or if you're abroad, you can become a friend of AfriForum by also just Googling Friends of AfriForum and becoming a member there if you're abroad. And then, if you're out of the loop in this court case, I don't blame you. It's hours and hours. I attended the entire court case, and I had to rewatch it now because I'm writing a lot on it, and I can't misquote someone. I can't get my facts wrong, so I had to rewatch the entire thing. I'm still in the process of rewatching it. So yeah, if you want to get that context, you want to get specifically a focus on Julius Malema's cross-examination with full context and full referencing on where he said what, go check out my YouTube channel where I just did a deep dive analysis on it this evening, and it got a very good reaction, which I'm very grateful for.
Yes, I'm definitely going to go watch it after we're done at the stream here. Definitely want to take a look at that. Thank you, everybody that's watching. I'm not ending the show yet. I'm just saying thank you for watching and everybody that came through and after Ernst was done. Thank you for the comments. Everybody's giving comments. If you have any questions, guys, to our panelists, please feel free to ask away.
Joe, I just got to run though.
Okay, cool.
I got some other responsibilities to get to, but thank you very much for having me on the show and for giving me the platform. Really appreciate it. And then also best of luck to my fellow panelists here as well. Both of them doing great work.
All right, cool. No worries. Ernst, thank you so much for giving some of your time for us, and keep up the great work. And yeah, I'll have you back again soon. All right, cool. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm still with Dear SA, Rob Hutchinson. He's in the middle. And, of course, Morris Root from IRR. All right, gents. Look, we're going to end it pretty soon at 9:30, if that's okay with you guys, or do you guys also have to shoot off? You guys are good. All right, cool. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, keep the questions coming in. I will make sure that we have time to answer those questions. Now, for my gentlemen, my esteemed gentlemen that are still here, I want to chat to you guys about, so we've mentioned now the fight against the state of disaster, all that stuff. Is there anything else with regards to the lockdown specifically that you guys are also busy fighting? It can be anything, like another, I don't know, whether it's fighting against open-toe shoes never to be banned again ever, or banning of Crocs, because I think a lot of people would appreciate that. Marius, is there anything you guys are busy with as well in terms of legislation?
Well, not with regard to the lockdown. As I said, I think we're actually pretty close to a win. I think a lot of only real regulations that are left are mask mandates and limits on gatherings and what have you. And yeah, so I think we're pretty much at the end of this. I think we've seen that President Ramaphosa said he wants to end the state of disaster soon. So I think the main thing now is just to watch what the ANC is going to, plan to do. Are they going to try and make some of these regulations more permanent? As I said, possibly mask mandates or vaccine mandates or whatever the case is. I think if you want to wear a mask, I think that should be up to you. I don't think anybody should be ridiculed for wearing a mask. Same with vaccines. If you want to get vaccinated, I think that should be 100% your choice. I've personally been vaccinated. I think from what I've read, it seems like it's a good idea, but nobody should be forced to. It should be everybody's individual choice. I think maybe the kind of things that we see in East Asia is not a bad idea. I was in Vietnam a couple of years ago. My cousin was living there. I went to go visit him, and a lot of people were wearing masks already then. This was 2017, and I said to him, this is a bit weird. Why is everybody doing this? And he said, no, it's actually pretty good. If somebody's feeling a bit ill and they've got, a bit of a cough or sneezing a bit, they wear a mask, which, I think that's probably not a bad idea. But the government should not be forcing you to do it. It should be your own choice. And yeah, as I say, I think we're pretty much at the end of, we're definitely in the final stretch, I think. And I think we've done pretty well. And I think, I reckon the state of disaster will be ending quite soon. So just from that point of view, nothing really in the pipeline, but we have, as I said, earlier, we have our legal team has written to the president and to, of course, Zana Dlamini Zuma to find out why the final regulations, why they are still in place, and what scientific rationale there is to still have them in place.
All right. Just another follow up on that. So you were in Vietnam and people wearing masks. So you think that might be a thing? So we might be in a situation where one of the Health Act amendments is like, if you're feeling sick, wear a mask and self-isolate, for example.
Well, but I mean, that's even how you'd have to firstly prove that people are sick or whatever. How are you going to, somebody who's sneezing, just saying, I've got hay fever, unless you grab the person and say, we're going to go, do tests on you. So, I mean, but people, even before COVID, if somebody felt ill, they wouldn't go to the office, they'd stay at home.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to give everybody else their flu or their cold. And just, the mask issue, that's never been a thing in our culture, but in Western culture or space, it's an East Asian thing. And I don't think it'll be a bad idea if people do decide to do that. Just wear a mask when you're feeling a bit sick, you got a bit of a cough or sneezing. But as I say, that should be 100% each individual's choice. Yeah. There should not be no law saying if you're sneezing, if you sneeze twice a minute over a 3-hour period, you have to wear a mask or something. It's completely ridiculous. And yeah, I think, perhaps if there's some things that we learn out of this COVID, as I say, maybe where people do wear masks when they're feeling a bit ill, maybe people who didn't really wash their hands before will wash their hands more. I don't know. But yeah, so I think there'll be, but I mean, I don't know if we'll see really big changes in society. I mean, I think after the Spanish flu, which was, we all know that was probably the last big global pandemic that we had. I don't know if there were really any big permanent changes after that. So yeah, I don't know if we'll see anything. Talking about our societies, we've seen our governments around the world have tried to grab power, they've overreached. But we've seen there's been a lot of pushback from people across the world against these kind of like governments grabbing power unfairly, and this kind of, in some places there does seem to be a push to create some kind of biosecurity state. But I think there has been pushback from people, and I think governments just need to treat people like adults. I mean, this is also a personal anecdote, but just before we had our own lockdown, it was my brother's birthday actually the weekend before there was a lockdown, and he planned a bra, whatever the case was, and he said, you know what, we've got this thing going on, let's not have this bra. And I think people will be sensible. If we had some kind of horrible Ebola virus where, there was 20%, if you got it, you got a 20% chance of dying, people would not be going out and going to pubs and doing, all kinds of things. So, the government just needs to treat people like adults, and people need to be able to make decisions for their own lives. Some people are going to take risks. We know that the people out there who drive drunk or without seatbelts or whatever. There is legislation against that, obviously, but people still do it, and people do take risks and do silly things, and we just got to treat people like adults. And when somebody does do something silly, I mean, there is things again, you have to wear a seatbelt or whatever the case is. So yeah, but I just think, governments need to treat people like adults and mustn't treat people as toddlers, and people can make own decisions about their lives in general.
All right, that's fair enough. Rob, anything to comment on that?
Yeah, I think I agree with absolutely everything Mario said. It's about making your own decisions and making responsible decisions and assessing the risks that surround you. There are different situations. We're in different workplaces. Some people work outdoors, some people work indoors, and you just need to use our own common sense and logic around that. When we grew up, we were always told to put your hand in front of your mouth when you cough or sneeze. It's the same thing now, isn't it? It's behavioral change that needs to happen. And I know that's a terrible phrase to use, but it's what this whole COVID thing has been about. It's about behavioral change and being more aware. If people want to wear masks, then by all means do so. No one should discriminate against you or force you to wear one. And the same applies for COVID passports. I think that's one thing that we have to definitely keep an eye on. A health passport, it will probably be called, instead of a COVID passport. But that also is a discriminatory practice, which we will fight vigorously against any form of passport, or people being denied entry into workplaces and losing their jobs and so on, simply because of their health status, whatever it might be. Might not be COVID in the future, it might be something else, but yeah, the premise still stands, and we've all been trained to accept this as normal, but it's not normal. It's not normal. No. We need to look after ourselves, and we need to be allowed the opportunity to do so without government forced mandates or punitive measures placed against those who do not comply. That's not democracy. And what we need is a strengthening of democracy to avoid situations like we have just seen in Canada and so on, with the erosion of democracy and drift towards a totalitarian state. Nobody wants to live under that, no matter how attractive the socialists might think it is. It's not. Once you're in that, you don't get out very easily, and it's not a pretty sight. You can only fight your way out of that kind of a situation. Absolutely. And we don't want to get there. So I think let's keep an eye on. I think one other thing that we will definitely oppose is the mask mandates and restrictions in schools and on kids. I think there's no science behind it. Why can you sit at a restaurant and without a mask, but you can't sit at a school table without a mask? It makes no sense in anyone's book. So, and it's really destroying young kids' development from many cases. And it's detrimental to future generations of South Africans or wherever you are in the world. So, yeah, we'll fight against mask mandates in schools. If those aren't dropped, then we'll definitely challenge that head on. And of course, the COVID passports.
Cool. That sounds great. I think a lot of people would agree with you as well. Like, I'm not too keen on those health passports either. It feels like a restriction of movement, in my opinion. But I've got a question here from Peter. Do any of these guests have an opinion on Canada? We haven't really touched what we've mentioned Canada in like passing. Marius, do you want to take that question?
Well, it's pretty cold, or does he mean opinion on the place in general, or on what's happening? And
I think he means Justin Trudeau and his I don't know what you call it. Some people are saying it's fascist, but I mean he's not really using the army to keep the
look,
control.
I mean, I don't know if you can call it fascist, but I think Justin Trudeau is definitely he's damaged some democratic norms. I mean, he's frozen people's bank accounts without warrants. As people have made the point, if Vladimir Putin did this, froze people's bank accounts without a court order, or just unilaterally, people would be up in arms, and rightly so. And and this Justin Trudeau also just the Emergencies Act has been extended in Canada, which gives the government all these for these kinds of powers, and also they can restrict gatherings and so on. And look, I mean, I'll be honest, I've got a little bit of sympathy for Justin Trudeau, because the truckers were, disrupting things and so on. But I mean, that is the point of a protest. But I think the way, I mean, there was, they were blocking main roads, and and supply chain issues were starting to happen, and people's lives were getting turned upside down. But that is the point of protest. But also, but I think the way that he's done it has been very heavy-handed. As I say, with this Emergencies Act that has just been extended in the Canadian Parliament, he can restrict protests in certain areas. People's bank accounts have been frozen. So I think it's definitely something to watch. But from the interview, when I've seen Justin Trudeau in Parliament recently, he seems to be quite shaken up. And you can see people from other political parties, especially the Conservative Party there and the Bloc Québécois, I think I pronounced that correctly, have been pushing back against Justin Trudeau. And we must also remember that because of the way the Canadian election system works, Justin Trudeau's party actually wasn't actually the biggest party in the last election, 2021, nor in 2019. They actually had the second most amount of votes off the Conservative Party. But because of the electoral system, same system that we had in South Africa and apartheid, in the UK, India also uses it, lots of countries, called the Westminster system, his party still managed to have the most seats in Parliament. So in the last election, about 70% of Canadians voted for political parties that were not Justin Trudeau and his Liberal Party. So it shows you, I don't think Justin Trudeau is overly popular, and he's probably, I would be very surprised if he wins another term as Canadian Prime Minister. And there might be an election in Canada, pretty soon. They only had one last year, but there might be one, sooner than we think. So, as I say, I'll be honest, I have a little bit of sympathy for Trudeau, but I think he's been very heavy-handed, and I don't think they needed to implement this, use this Emergencies Act to stop these protests.
All right, Rob, anything to comment?
Yeah, well, I have absolutely zero sympathy for Trudeau. Sorry, Morris.
I would tend to agree with Rob on that one.
I think he's got everything he deserved, and he's going to get a whole lot more. He's going to get a bit of a fright. But the most important thing here is it's a great lesson to the world that you should not trust your government. It's really, democracy is fragile. It is easily manipulated, and it takes a lot of hard work from citizens rather than government. You can't sit back and let government make decisions, especially in a situation like Canada. I think, Morris, you pointed out there that Trudeau only won with like 32% of the vote, which is
about that,
which is crazy. And as soon as that happens, then it's up to citizens to make sure that government is kept on their toes, completely transparent, and so on. And from that point of view, you can understand that Trudeau was panicking. He realized this could result in a total coup. So he took the drastic route, and he employed measures the strictest measures that he possibly could. But I think it's damaged him long term politically. There's no recovery from this. And the crazy thing is, I think New Zealand is going to be next in line with Jacinda Ardern. The unrest that's happening down there, the trucker convoy, and she's employing exactly the same tactics as Trudeau. Obviously, they both learned from the same school, but it's going to end in the same catastrophe politically for both of them. I don't think they have a future or another term on the cards in any way whatsoever.
I think just one thing where you said you shouldn't trust governments. Something with the Liberal Party, that's Justin Trudeau's party. They when they won in 2015 in their manifesto, they said they actually wanted electoral reform and to bring in some kind of proportional representation system in Canada, which would have obviously prevented these kind of results now, where a party can win 30% of the votes and then be the governing party or be the government. And since they won in 2015. That's been put on the back burner. The Liberal Party hasn't been speaking about electoral reform because they know it would harm them. So I think it's one of those things, never trust the manifesto, what they say. As soon as the party was in power and the system was benefiting them, then they decided, this, electoral reform is not really for us.
Eesh.
It's typical government.
All right. Doesn't give me much hope for the any parties that are here either. Yeah. Well, speaking of which, I would like to get maybe your guys' take on this very quickly. Last question for the evening. What do you think 2024 is going to look like? What do you think the election results are going to look like? We'll start with Rob on this one.
Sure. Okay, I'll pull up my crystal ball quickly here. You never know. You never know what's going to happen. So it'd be crazy to make accurate predictions. But I think an assumption would be that the ANC is going to definitely continue on their downward slide. They're going to have to consider coalition, either a coalition with the EFF or some other parties there, just to get the numbers up. But I don't think they will drop below 50%. ANC's got a really amazing ability to pull a rabbit out of a hat at the last second. And I wouldn't put it past them if they do this again and then just find those extra votes. There's a huge amount of ANC supporters who aren't actually voting. They didn't vote in the last elections or the previous ones. So the obvious route for the ANC would be to reignite those people and reintroduce them and get them to vote again, and that'll increase their majority. So I think that'll probably be their tactic. Unfortunately, I think we're stuck with the ANC for quite a few years still, and maybe that's a good thing. If anything, the municipal coalitions have shown that we're not ready for a coalition government in any way whatsoever, and yeah, we still need some practice in that space. So let's practice it at a local level before we try and introduce a coalition government at a national level. I think a coalition government at a national level at this stage could be a disaster for South Africa. So let's just deal with the devil that we would know currently, and that's the ANC, and deal with it, and maybe we should be strengthening civil society, Marius, and getting those things up. And I'm a firm believer that change comes from the bottom up instead of from the top down. So our role is to strengthen civil society and get people more active and engaged, and keep an eye on our crazy politicians so that they don't do crazy things.
I agree.
Yeah, Marius, do you have anything to add? Or
Yeah, I think Rob's probably right. The ANC is definitely going to lose support in 2024, but I think they might. They got 57% in the last election, so to lose 7 percentage points is going to be quite a big drop for them. I don't think it's impossible, but if I was a betting man, I'd say the ANC is going to get 51, 52, somewhere around there. I don't think the EFF is going to benefit too much from that. I think we could see someone like Mashaba and Action SA do pretty well out of it. We're definitely going to see a coalition government in Gauteng, I think. The ANC is certainly going to go under 50% in Gauteng. They might then be able to stay in power, but we might see a coalition of other parties, DA, Action SA, Freedom Front Plus, IFP, whoever the case might be. And I think the ANC is also in very big trouble in KwaZulu-Natal. I think in the last provincial election, between 2014 and 2019, they went from 64% of the vote to 54% of the vote, so 10 percentage points drop, which is pretty big. So, and I think we've seen the ANC is pretty unpopular in KwaZulu-Natal if we look at the results from the municipal election. So I think we're going to see at least 3 provinces governed by either outright by parties that aren't the ANC or coalition. The DA is not going to lose the Western Cape, and I think Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal will be governed in coalition. Maybe the Northern Cape as well. The ANC is always, the sport's kind of soft there. So we'll definitely see that. But Rob's right. Coalitions are going to be very messy, but the way our system's designed, that's actually it's going to be much more common at provincial and national level, and we need our political parties to be to become much more mature and be able to work together. If we look at other countries around the world which use proportional representation systems, Germany is a good example. Their coalition government is the default. There's always more than one party in government. Right now, we've seen Angela Merkel's party lost last year, and it's the Social Democrats plus the Greens and the Free Democrats. And it's all from fairly different ideological positions. I mean, the Social Democrats kind of lefty, the Greens obviously, and Free Democrats are your European classical liberal, not liberals as in the North American sense of the word. But what they do is before they get together, before they decide on the coalition, they have long negotiations to make sure each political party knows what they're going to get out of it, what they're going to be giving to this coalition. They also go back to their members and say, this is what we've got. Are you guys happy with this? And their members will say yes. And we need that kind of thing in our politics where we decide on before the coalition is entered into what each party wants and what they're going to provide for the coalition, so we don't have these unstable coalitions, which is bad for everybody. But I think most probably we are going to have the ANC till at least 2029. But I think there's a very good chance that President Ramaphosa is going to be the last ever ANC president of South Africa. And I think by 2029, I mean, you kind of get the feeling that the ANC is phoning it in at this point. A lot of the people who vote for it, I think, it's just inertia. And Rob made a very good point about a lot of ANC voters who don't vote for the ANC anymore. But I think for a lot of those kinds of people, their first step in breaking away from the ANC is to stay away. And the next step then is to go vote for another party, whoever it may be. And I think that is what's happening for a lot of people. They haven't voted. They were always, ANC guys going back however long. And last couple of elections are, they're not interested in voting. Now it's the job of the opposition parties to get guys like that to come out and vote. I mean, the biggest single voting bloc in South Africa is non-voters. So I think something like 90 million South Africans who were eligible didn't vote in the last election. So even if only half of those people, if only a quarter, come out and vote for somebody else, then that'll be the end of ANC in South Africa. And we've seen it happens often around the world. It's happened in South Africa to the National Party, happened in Zambia to a party called UNIP, in Kenya to a party called KANU, when these big hegemonic parties who've been in government for many years, 30 or 40 years, finally once they lose power, they lose their rationale for existing, and that's it. So I think there's, if the ANC loses power in 2029, which I think will happen, the ANC probably won't exist by 2035, would be my call.
All right. That's a very fair analysis. I'm hopeful that ANC will get below 50%. But we'll see. As long as guys like you and like IRR, DRSA, AfriForum, Sakharija, myself, and all the other alternative news sphere keep on fighting the good fight, I think we'll be okay. But yeah, gents, it is pretty much the end of the show. Thank you so much for giving up an hour and a half of your time. It really means a lot to me. Marius, thank you so much for coming onto the show. I would love to have a solo interview with you, but we'll chat about that another time. Rob, I'd love to have you back again as well. But yeah, thank you guys again for giving up your time. Thank you to everybody who watched as well and jumped from Conscious Caracal to this stream. It's greatly appreciated. If you haven't yet, please subscribe. Gents, do you have anything in closing to say? But before you do, remember, ladies and gentlemen, all their links are in the description. Follow them on Twitter. Go to their website. Support these guys as much as possible. But is there anything that you guys want to end off on? Marius, you can go first.
No, I think I've already said what I want to say. But yeah, if anybody's interested in the campaigns that I've mentioned, you can go to our website, rrr.org.za. We also have a news and opinion website called dailyfriend.co.za that people can go check out with new opinion pieces on there every day, and also cover some news that maybe you won't see anywhere else. And you can see my writing there. I think your viewers are probably familiar with Gabriel Krause. You can also catch some of his writing there. And yeah, so if anybody's interested in that, then you can go there, dailyfriend.co.za, or as I say, go have a look at our campaigns on rrr.org.za.
Fantastic. Rob, where can people find you?
You can find us on dsouthafrica.co.za. We've got many participation campaigns going there. And I think the most important thing for any South African is you must support civil society organizations, or just whether it's you don't, and I'm not talking just financially, but in any way possible, support them, give them encouragement to continue doing what we do. And it doesn't really matter which organization you do support, as long as it's an organization that is, got or supports your views and challenges government in the decisions that they make. IRR is a terrific organization. AfriForum has got a reputation that really it doesn't deserve, and that's quite sad, because they're a terrific organization. They do a lot of wonderful things for all sectors of society. Sarkalik is brilliant for business, and self-promotion here. Dare say does what it does and assists public participation. But there are other organizations as well. Let's not forget them. And really, let's strengthen civil society, because that is the only thing that keeps government in check, and it's sponsored by us.
Fantastic. All right, gentlemen, you guys can just hang up. Thank you guys again for joining. And I'll be in touch with you guys. Thanks again. Cheers.
Cool. Cheers. You guys.
Thank you so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Rob Hutchinson from Dear SA and Marius Roots from IRR, and of course earlier was Ernst van Sale. I always get them confused. Ernst van Sale from AfriForum, or also known as Conscious Clerical. Thank you guys once again so much for tuning in. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, give this video a like, and think about becoming a member. Support this channel. Every Tuesday is panel night. Next week on this channel, I'm going to have Bongani from Action SA. I'm going to have John Enders from IRR, and I'm going to have... There's someone else who I can't believe I'm forgetting about now. But, Martin van Sale is also going to be with me. Martin van Sterden, is going to be with me. And we're going to be talking about the Zimbabwean permits that have been revoked. And now the ANC is given 12 months grace period. We're going to be talking about the rhetoric that is going around that Zimbabweans are a problem for South Africa and they are stealing jobs. We're going to be talking about all that. So I'm going to have a politician, I'm going to have an activist, and I'm going to have two activists, and we're going to be dissecting this issue. And I'm very excited to have Bongani on the show. He is a new addition to Action SA and has been vocal about this Zimbabwean issue as well as Action SA has also been vocal. So we'll get the final details and also the view of Action SA on this whole Zimbabwean ordeal. And as well, we'll talk to the activists as well and what their plans are to help Zimbabweans. So it's surely going to be an interesting conversation. Do tune in next week, Tuesday, for that show. I'll be back on Thursday evening this week with another edition of Comedians Roast the Headlines. For those of you who may not know, that's where me and fellow comedians roast headlines. Usually we find headlines that make us go, say what? And we make fun of the headlines, and it's a lot of laughs, so please join us for that show. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for tuning in. I'm sorry about the little bit of hiccup that happened earlier on. That normally doesn't happen. Not sure what's happening. Think I need to upgrade the software a little bit. But anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy your Wednesday as well. I'll see you Thursday evening. If I don't see you then, stay safe, be kind to one another, and I'll see you at the next one. Cheers.